This is the ADA celebration, week 3. Okay, so if you need the ASL interpreters, they are spotlighted, but you can pin them by clicking on the 3 little dots on the right top corner and pinning them to your own screen. We also have the ability to have a view of only the people who have their cameras on. So if you are not presenting, please keep your camera off and your mics off to help with the bandwidth and help with accessibility. Feel free to use our chat for questions and comments. And at 10 minutes before we end, we're going to open up a poll. Please try and stay for the poll. If you have any technical issues or questions, feel free to send me a message in the chat. And for now, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Mel to open our day.
This is Mel speaking. I'm an Asian person with dark hair that's pulled back. I'm wearing a black shirt, glasses, and a headset. And my background is a virtual backdrop of solid white with the Northwest ADA Center logo and another logo alongside that shows ADA 30, 1990 to 2021, Americans with Disabilities Act, celebrate the ADA. So that's what we're here for today, and I'm so glad you all could join us. As Carrie mentioned, this is the 3rd week of our ADA celebration. It's a series that kicked off on July 6th. And if you'd like to check out the previous 2 webinars, please visit the Oregon Disabilities Commission website and use the link ADA Celebration. You'll find information about past and future webinars, as well as information about our featured speakers. Today's Lunch and Learn webinar is titled Equity, Intersectionality, Social Construction of Disabilities, and Disability Justice. And this webinar is being recorded and has live captioning and American Sign Language interpreting. I'll go ahead and turn the microphone over to one of our presenters, someone I've had the great pleasure to work with over the years and I've learned so much from. So Sabine Rear, if you'd like to take it away.
Hi, this is Sabine Rear. Thank you, Mel, for that really kind introduction. I'm going to pause for a moment and ask that our slides be shared, and we can just hang out on that first slide for a moment. And Mel, if you would like to unpin yourself as well. Thanks very much. I'll wait for that to enter presentation mode and then we'll get started.
Sorry, which one are you seeing? The whole one or the?
I'm seeing the full screen with the slides on the side.
Okay, just a second.
Okay.
Ah, is that it?
That's it. Beautiful.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. So this is our just landing slide here. It is an artistic image produced by Sins Invalid with a cloud of words over a sort of vein or tree pattern. The word cloud is all of the 10 principles of disability justice in a variety of fonts spread out over the image. We're going to speak to each of these individually, so I won't read them all now, but I thought this was a nice framing place to start before we introduce ourselves. We'll do that now. Next slide. Look at this cute introduction slide. We're going to introduce ourselves in order of speaking, and then we will move on to the content of our presentation. My name is Sabine Rear, as Mel said. I'm a white woman in my late 20s with brown hair. I've got blunt bangs and sort of a shaggy mullet haircut, and glasses. And I'm backlit a bit from a large window behind me. I am here as the Oregon representative of the Northwest ADA Center, located in Mountain Lake Terrace, Washington, which provides technical assistance, training, and support to Region 10, which is Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and Alaska. I'm also the accessibility specialist at the Community Vision Assistive Technology Lab here in Portland. And I use she, her pronouns. I'm going to pass it off to Missy.
Hey everyone, I am Missy Elliott. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am a biracial Filipino and Western European or white cisgender woman with shoulder length dark brown hair, and I'm wearing a white cardigan with a gray and pink dress, with my background being the Disability Pride Month flag. I work as a service equity manager for the Office of Developmental Disability Services, and I work inside the Office of Equity and Multicultural Services. And I get the pleasure to talk about how equity impacts all Oregonians with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And I'm going to pass it to Nicole.
Hi everyone, my name is Nicole Birdsell. My pronouns are she, her. I am a white woman with short pink hair and a virtual background with colorful depictions of different forms of disabilities. I am the Equity and Policy Coordinator for Aging and People with Disabilities in Clackamas County. And I'm gonna hand it over to Erin.
Hello, everyone. My name is Erin Taylor. I am a white middle-aged woman with short brown hair, clear glasses. I have a gray sweater with argyle print and blues and grays. And I am the health promotion coordinator for 2 offices at Oregon Health Science University. I work for the Oregon Office on Disability and Health, and then I also work for the University Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities as a health promotion coordinator. Okay, Sabine, I'm sending it back to you now.
Thanks, everyone. Wonderful intros. Really delighted to be here with all of you. Next slide, please. Thanks very much. So on this slide, there's another visualization of these 10 principles of disability. And I'm going to pause for a moment and talk a little bit about Sins Invalid, the collective of intersectional disabled artists and activists who brought together these principles and who do a lot of work in the disability justice community. I'm pausing here too because the title of this presentation, Intersectionality, Equity, the Social Construction of Disability and Disability Justice, is quite a mouthful. And please let me know if I'm speaking too quickly. It's quite a mouthful, right? And quite complex on paper. And what we want to do today is to speak through these 10 principles of disability justice, which come to us from Sins Invalid, an organization rooted in disability justice as an intersectional movement pioneered by BIPOC people with disabilities, queer people with disabilities, and economically disadvantaged people with disabilities as a way of understanding an intersectional disabled experience. We think these principles are really valuable and also will bring us to an understanding of the subject matter of this talk in what we hope is an accessible and powerful way. We want to be really clear that disability justice and disability rights are in many ways different movements grounded in sometimes different and sometimes the same communities. And we want to be honoring the work of queer, disabled people of color in the creation, distribution, and inaction of these principles. So here in this image is a list of the principles in order, but for the purposes of our presentation, we chose to mix them up a little bit. We will each be speaking about a few and drawing some parallels between them. And I'll hand it off to Missy to speak about the first three principles.
This is Missy. Hi, everyone. And if we could advance the slide. Perfect. Thank you so much. So on this slide, before we begin, I want to share that it has a picture of Audre Lorde, who is a writer, womanist, and civil rights activist, with one of her quotes that says, "There is no such thing as a single issue struggle because we do not live single issue lives." Now I'll be talking to start about intersectionality. As it says on the 10 disability justice principles, intersectionality is ableism coupled with white supremacy, supported by capitalism, underscored by heteropatriarchy, has rendered the vast majority of the world invalid. So we have a list of different ways people may or may not experience oppression. And I'd like to list some of those for you beyond what is written here. We know that people of different religions, of different socioeconomic status, or different levels of income, racially, gender identity-wise, sexual orientation, and geography, and ability, last but not least, all impact how someone is able to move around in the world, whether they experience oppression based on those different identities that make them whole, or some privileges. And one of the things that I always think about is my own identities, even education level. And when we talk about intersectionality of disability and disability justice, we have to take into account you as a whole person, I as a whole person, in order to be able to address all of the different ways our system makes it harder or easier for us. And how can we lift others up when they're experiencing those hard times? Next slide, please. This moves us into our next principle, commitment to cross-movement organizing. On this slide, you'll see a red frame around a picture of a Black man named Brad Lomax, who was a Black Panther as well as a disability rights movement protester. And the definition or principle around commitment to cross-movement organizing is shifting how social justice movements understand disability and contextualize ableism. Disability justice lends itself to the politics of alliance. We all could learn from what occurred in the 1960s around the disability rights movement, when the Black Panthers joined with the disability rights protesters and said absolutely no more oppression for people with disabilities. And that occurred because Brad Lomax personified both identities of being a Black man and a Black man with a disability. And we can see that as movements come together to address the oppressions that we experience, there's strength in what we can learn. So I hope that we can continue to even look at just last year in the Black Lives Matter protests that occurred in Portland and across our country. We saw mutual strength when the disability community also joined with the Black Lives Matter movement and asked for accessibility in their protesting practices. We saw people with ASL interpreters that were able to come to those protests and be seen and be able to communicate across the movements that were occurring, and that added strength and numbers to the movement that was occurring. And we can continue to do that for big systems change and dismantling systems that have been so oppressive to so many. Next slide, please. This leads me into the third principle that I'll be talking about today. Commitment to cross-disability solidarity. We honor the insights and participation of all of our community members, knowing that isolation undermines collective liberation. And on the slide on the right is a picture of Leroy Moore, a Black man with no shirt on, hands outstretched and together, with words above him that say, "All bodies are unique and essential. All bodies are whole. All bodies have strengths and needs that must be met. We are powerful, not despite the complexities of our bodies, but because of them. We move together with no body left behind." This is disability justice. So as we look at this principle, it is about how do we collectively come together? We know that there are so many different types of disabilities that we may experience, or impairments that we may have that are classified as a disability or defined in that way. Physical, developmental, invisible, visible. But the truth is they all matter. And it's strength in coming together and unity where we can make sure those voices can be heard. And we experience that oppression differently, but we want to make sure that if we're going to interrupt those systems and see that we all are meant to be here and have our voices heard, that it takes all of us to bring that spotlight to each other. So with that being said, I'm going to pass this to Sabine so she can tell you a little bit about some of the other principles.
This is Sabine. Thanks, Missy. Next slide, please. Our next principle, leadership of those most impacted. We are led by those who most know these systems, Aurora Levin Morales. The image on this slide is a group of protesters in wheelchairs of a variety of races. The individual closest to the frame, to the lens, on the right-hand side is a Black man in a wheelchair holding a banner with another person in a wheelchair. And the banner reads, "Disabled People's Liberation Front." Leadership of those most impacted, and Levin Morales's reference to systems makes me think about the disability rights principle of nothing about us without us, and of the challenges we face when, as a intersectional community, we attempt to earnestly center the voices of those who are most marginalized by the systems we attempt to interrupt. Those systems function deliberately to keep those most impacted out or to disenfranchise them. And it is our responsibility as an intersectional disabled community to remain vigilant about moments in which it is easier to listen to who is loudest, who has the most access, or who is the most able to be present, to step back and move at our own pace and acknowledge a disabled pace, or what we would call crip time, right? And understanding that disabled people have their own relationship with time in many cases, and to take on a commitment to honoring the leadership qualities of those most impacted by systems of oppression. Next slide. The next principle is sustainability. I've grouped these together because I think the previous principle, this one, and the next are all sort of to do with the intention to take your time and create a movement that is focused on the full participation and honoring of all community members to the greatest extent possible. So the principle of sustainability, the text from the principles reads, "We pace ourselves individually and collectively to be sustained long term. Our embodied experiences guide us toward ongoing justice and liberation." And the image on this slide is a piece of art created by Micah Bazant for Sins Invalid. It's an image of a Black person in a wheelchair reaching out to hold the hand of a person in a head covering with multiple amputations. They're reaching for each other. Behind one is what I believe are prison bars, and behind the other, a house that I believe is on fire. And the text reads, "Disability justice means resisting together from solitary cells to open air prisons. To exist is to resist." Next slide. The final principle I'll be talking about is collective liberation. No body or mind can be left behind. Only moving together can we accomplish the revolution we require. Again, this speaks directly to the need to work together, honor each other's differences, and find liberation that meets the needs of all. In the disability community, we often find our particular access needs and experiences bump against each other in certain ways. My access needs may be interrupting the access needs of someone else just by their nature. And in order to achieve this type of collective liberation, it takes a certain amount of commitment to sitting with those contradictions and finding community in their context. The image on this slide is a photo of Leah Lakshmi Pipenza Samaransinha, a poet, an activist, and Sins Invalid collaborator. Superimposed over their photo is a quotation that I'm going to read now. Creating space to tell disability stories is a way that we remake the world. I can create the movements that are going to save my life, that aren't going to leave me behind. And with that, I will hand it off to our next speaker. Next slide, please.
Hi, this is Nicole. So this is an image of a hand holding some dollar bills, and it says anti-capitalist. This is the disability justice principle. It says, in an economy that sees land and humans as components of profit, we are anti-capitalist by the nature of having non-conforming bodies and minds. So in order to understand the importance of anti-capitalism, let's start with what capitalism is. So it's an economic system that prioritizes the profits of individual business owners over the well-being of society as a whole. This system inherently links an individual's worth to how much profit they can make for the capitalist class. Under capitalism, your worth is literally how much money you can generate. Under this system, people who can't participate in producing profits to the extent that society has deemed is necessary to quote unquote earn their worth are considered inherently unworthy. Because of this, people living with disabilities are often excluded from job opportunities, and 29% of workers with disabilities only work part-time. We also have a long history of paying people with disabilities a sub-minimum wage to ensure maximum profit from those who are unable to meet the productive capacity deemed quote-unquote normal. This practice continues even today when individuals whose earning or productive capacity is impaired by a physical or a mental disability can be paid only $4.25 an hour. However, not all people with disabilities want or are able to work. Those who can't participate in this system due to their disabilities will sometimes receive a poverty wage through SSI or SSDI. However, in our capitalist system, this meager safety net is constantly under scrutiny and attack, because when people's worth is tied to how much they contribute to the wealth of others, receiving monetary assistance that is not quote unquote earned is framed as a drain on society. But this is a backwards way of thinking about it. Society's primary purpose is to ensure that the people in it are cared for. This is the basic social contract that we enter in as citizens. People do not have to earn their right to life. Capitalism also individualizes problems that can't be fixed on an individual level. When everything's built on the tenet of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, something that is literally impossible, by the way, accommodations become something that are they're a responsibility of those who need them.
Nicole, this is Carrie. Sorry, this is just your 12:30 time check.
Okay. Not only is this inequitable, but it's often impossible. Accommodations that make spaces accessible for people with disabilities are usually systemic or costly, and that's too big of a burden to put on the people who need them. However, investing in accessibility threatens the profits of the capitalist class, and therefore it doesn't happen without enforcement of laws like the ADA. Additionally, since a key tenet of disability justice is intersectionality, it's important to also consider the ways in which capitalism negatively and disproportionately impacts people with disabilities who also hold other marginalized identities. For example, Black Americans of working age are more likely than other races to have a disability in the first place and face employment discrimination based on both their disability status and their race. In general, having a disability creates extra costs for people who are often already living in poverty, But this can be especially difficult for Black, Indigenous, and other people of color who already have poorer outcomes in education, income, and employment. Next slide, please. So this slide says recognizing wholeness. There's an image that says we are human beings, not human doings. And this principle is that people have inherent worth outside of commodity relations and capitalist notions of productivity. Each person is full of history and life experience. So in our current system, people have been manipulated into believing that productivity fundamentally dictates value. This framing of people who can't participate in capitalist notions of productivity as being less valuable or worthy has resulted in horrific acts of abuse, eugenics, inhumane institutionalization, and isolation for people with disabilities. So if a person's value is not tied to their productivity, as capitalism would have us believe, what does it mean to have worth, and who gets to assign value? Well, some people will provide examples of ways we produce value non-monetarily, so acts of service, caregiving, love, friendship, kindness. But while these are all valuable for relationships, they still fall into the capitalist notion of tying worth to what someone can do for others. In a disability justice framework, though, worth is something every person just inherently has. People with disabilities are whole people who live whole lives filled with unique thoughts and hopes and emotions and perspectives. And these are all intrinsically valuable regardless of if or how they impact others. By virtue of life, people are worthy and valuable and whole. This idea of wholeness is also really important to emphasize because people with disabilities are constantly being fed messages that they need to be quote unquote fixed or cured. This is an ableist narrative that assumes that people are only capable of living a fulfilling life if they fit into society's standards. The issue is not with how to make people fit into the society, but how to make the society serve its people. People are not problems to be solved. It's the circumstances that we've created that exclude people from accessing all facets of life that need to be addressed. This is essentially what the social model of disability states. That the disability or the inability to access the world as fully as others do is actually the fault of a system.
Is this taped? Can you get a recording? Oh, it's being recorded.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, someone came off mute and I got a little thrown off. So the disability or the inability to access the world is actually the fault of a system that disables the person. It's not the fault of the person who can't access the system. And with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Erin and we can go on to the next slide.
Thank you, Nicole. So this is Erin speaking, and I'm going to be talking about interdependence and then also collective access as the last two parts of the disability justice, the principles of disability justice. So on the left side of the slide, it says interdependence. We meet each other's needs as we build liberation, knowing that state solutions inevitably extends into further control over our lives. And on the right side of the slide is an image of Stacey Park Milburn, who identifies as a mixed race Korean and white queer person. In the image, she's smiling at the camera. She has big glasses, wearing a black crew neck, and her trach and wheelchair can be seen. Milburn was a fierce disability activist who died last year on May 20th of 2020. And under the image is a quote that I saw and I'm like, oh, I have to read this for interdependence. It says, "We know no person is an island. We need one another to live." Or we live and love interdependently. We know no person is an island. We need one another to live. Sorry about the confusion there. So we've worked towards independence our whole lives for years, right? That it is the ultimate goal from day-to-day life skills to long-term goals, what are dreams and goals to be independent. And don't get me wrong, independence is important. But personally, I did not hear the term interdependence fully until I started going to graduate school for disability studies and really learned the beauty and the interconnectedness of it. So we practiced it growing up, but I didn't know there was a name to identify it. So I'm sure there's other people on this call who have the same narratives and the same memories of what interdependence is for them. We're all interdependent beings, and interdependence moves us away from a narrative of independence, thinking or acting for oneself, and it moves us towards meaningful relationships where we are all valued. We have gifts, we have skills, we have knowledge, we have time to offer with each other and to share. And disability justice helps bring this paradigm shift to the forefront. So I want to bring up the pandemic because I think there's so much that we have learned with the 10 principles of disability justice that really tie in with what we've seen through the pandemic. So we've seen inequities, we've seen unequal treatment of disabled people in other marginalized communities and intersecting identities. During the pandemic, we also experienced the wildfire, and then the most recent, the heat waves, were in many ways an extension of injustice, inequity, and oppression that disabled people experienced before the pandemic and have historically for centuries. So I've heard time and time again that, oh, we can't wait for things to go back to normal. When things go back to normal, we'll do this. And my question is, do we really want to go back to normal? Because normal didn't really work. So I would like to focus moving forward on what we've learned through the past 1.5 years to make a better society, better humans to the world and to each other. We need to see the importance of interdependence and accessibility to really meet people where they're at. It is imperative to see disability rights and disability justice as civil rights and social justice issues respectively. For years, disabled people have been oppressed and stigmatized, isolated, and discrimination against, and we need to change this. The oppression experienced by disabled people impacts all aspects of their lives, from socializing to work, home, school, health, which affects overall quality of life. We need to acknowledge and recognize our personal biases to help us understand how those biases can fuel injustices and inequities. It starts with awareness and education. Disabled people are still stigmatized, and so much of our systems and policies are based on institutionalized ableism. And when I speak about ableism, I'm talking about the conscious or unconscious set of beliefs or practices that discriminates against and devalue disabled people solely because of their disability. Ableism is also a societal belief that being able-bodied is normal and preferred, and that disabled people need, as Nicole said, needs to be fixed and cured, which looks through the medical model, and disability justice shifts us to the social model, the social construct of disability, saying that it's society that needs to be fixed. As we start discussing diversity and inclusion, we must include disabilities in these conversations in order to genuinely create an inclusive space for all, which creates collective access, which segues into my next, the last of the disability principles. Next slide, please. So on the left side of the slide is collective access, which the principle is, as brown, Black, and queer-bodied disabled people, we bring flexibility and creative nuance that go beyond able-bodied minded normativity to be in community with one another. And on the right side of the slide is an image of a black and white picture of a traditionally dressed Black woman smiling with open hands to her sides, reaching out to the front. And the background is dark brown with a mild sunburst around her. And the phrase is, as I think Missy had said earlier, all bodies are caught in the bindings of ability, race, class, gender, sexuality, and citizenship. We are all powerful, not despite the complexity of our identities, but because of them. Only universal collective access can lead to universal collective liberation. This is disability justice. So I have two questions when we look at collective access. First, what is it? And second, why is it important? So it seems pretty self-explanatory. Collective access is the access that intentionally is created collectively instead of individually. But as we know, access is much more complex, and it's a constant process, and it doesn't stop. It is fluid and it's ever changing. It's much more than getting a ramp up to a building or getting an online meeting accessible, which is so important. But access doesn't just stop there, and it takes collaboration. access is more about that built environment around us. It's also about the attitudes and social access. So most of the time, access is placed on the person who needs it, and it's up to the person, the disabled person, to figure out how to solve the access issue. But access is rarely weaved into collective commitment and a way of being. It is also isolated, and it becomes an afterthought, much like disabled people have historically been for years. So there was a term social access that I read in an article and in May, and I'll drop the link for the article in chat because I forgot to add it to the reference page. But this term social access has been on my mind a lot, and I wanted to just tell a bit about the story. So in the article, Peter Slatton, who identifies as a blind person, experienced a situation at the airport where he realized that he had been violated, not according to his ADA rights, but rather his rights of access to typical social interaction. That is what had been violated. Slatton continues to say that the ADA doesn't govern how we treat each other. And in the end, the article says, no matter how I carry myself and what I project, they are ready to deny me social access or the ability to choose where I go, what I do, and how to do it, with finding myself excluded from social barriers. While I can insist on inclusion all I want, only when the people who maintain those barriers recognize that they are also denying themselves the fruit of social accessibility, will they be able to see me as simply another person. So this quote was so powerful, and thinking of social access and what that looks like and what it entails, this really sums up the interdependence, collective access, and all the other disability justice principles that we've talked about. So as we close, we would like to end with a quote from ADAPT, who ADAPT is a national grassroots community that organizes disability rights activists to ensure the civil and human rights for people with disabilities to live in freedom. So next slide, please. I have the quote on this slide so you can follow along if you would like. It says, "We dismiss tolerance. It is lacking. It is empty. It is not enough. Instead, we argue for embrace. We advocate for bracing disability, demonstrating a willingness to open up, literally and figuratively, to have space with others in intimate ways, allowing for the real experience of friction, conflict, and even hurt, with the hope that it will result in healing, joy, and love. To recognize that disability may be identifiable or not, may be different today than tomorrow, and may have been different yesterday than it is today. And to stretch the embrace to accompany these multiple, varied, fluid experiences of disability." So we thank you for letting us share the principles of disability justice, which is so important and meaningful for all of us. And I think we have time for questions.
This is Sabine. If you have questions and you are able to put them in the chat, that's a great way to ask. If that doesn't meet your access needs and it's better for you to unmute and speak your question, you can do that. Or if you're able to use the raise hand function, that's also an option.
And it's right at 12:45, so feel free to take lots of questions and answers.
This is Sabine again. Also, thank you for advancing the slide. We have some resources here, a list of links to things that we mentioned or resources we think might be helpful. If you would like a copy of these slides, you are more than welcome to get in touch and request them, and we'd be happy to share.
This is Mel, and I am taking a look at what's in the chat box now, and I will read out comments and questions. One person writes, human beings, the capital B-E in beings, not human doings, capital D-O in doings. Love this, exclamation point. Beautiful, Nicole, thank you. One person writes, awesome information and content, with the hand in the OK position and hands clapping. Another person writes, normal wasn't working for sure. I feel empowered and excited about going back to a new and super opportunity in my work environment to advocate for universal access for accommodations. Fingers crossed, exclamation point. And the symbol for fingers crossed. Others write, yes, Amber. Another person writes, thank you for making the social access point. And there is a question, what is the link to the last two presentations? I missed them. Another person writes, this is so good. Embrace is a positive word. Tolerance has never been, exclamation point. And in answer to the previous question, they will be up on the ODC website next month. So the links to the previous presentations, if you missed them, will be up on the Oregon Disabilities Commission website. A comment here, thank you presenters so much. Followed by a comment, agreed about tolerance.
I do see a question directed to us that I just would love to open up. So Amy asks, for our presenters, what do you see as some of our greatest opportunities in advancing disability justice in this transitional period? Does anyone have thoughts on that?
This is Sabine. I think this has been talked about quite a bit lately, but a big opportunity for disability justice and for collective access is that we've found that in crisis, a lot of accommodations and ways of being that were previously thought of as either not possible, not convenient, not efficient or productive have turned out to be all of those things in many ways. And I think it's a good time for us collectively to be thinking about how to preserve that flexibility and those adaptive strategies and carry them forward. I know that in my work on the ADA technical assistance line, people have been calling in saying, I found these great ways to do my work, to connect with my community during the pandemic and while in crisis. And I want to know legally, how can I reinforce those things? I think that's a sticky question. And one thing that we can do as a community is to really listen to those new ways of doing and being, and try to carry what's positive forward into how we are sort of reshaping our relationship with work, public space, and community building.
This is Nicole, and Sabine, that's exactly what I was thinking. So well said. I also think something that we've seen with COVID specifically is the intersectionality between disability and socioeconomic status. So a lot of people who, we found out that you can work from home. You can do all of these things that were previously claimed, as impossible or impractical. They're still impossible or impractical for people who don't have technological access. So I think that this is something that we still have to continue to fight for, just expanding that access. I also saw another question. Could you, I love the term interdependence. It's the first time I've heard it said within the context of disability. Could you expand more on what interdependence looks like, both for people with disabilities and for society overall?
Hi, and this is Carrie. I'm just going to throw the poll up as you guys are answering that question.
This is Erin speaking. I'll go ahead. Interdependence is something that I'm really trying to learn and embracing it more and more. I think the reason is because, like I said earlier, it was something that I was never taught. And when I started working in group homes 30 years ago, right, the ultimate goal was independence, like do everything on your own, independence. And that was something that we taught and that we talked about. And as I start getting older and getting more accepting and of understanding my non-apparent disability, being progressive, there's certain things that I need and I want help with, and asking for help, coming together is not a sign of weakness. And I think oftentimes we think if we cannot do things independently, that that's a sign of weakness, and that is absolutely not correct. So for me, interdependence is really about how can we all come together collectively to help each other. And it's okay to say that we're not okay. It's okay to say that we want help. And I think having those open conversations, and they have been silenced for so many years, I think opening them and having them be okay is a part of interdependency. So I don't know if any of the other presenters have anything to add, but it's something that I want to incorporate more as in the field that I work in, really talking about independence and interdependence, because they are interconnected, and talking about how they are and the beauty of both of them separately and together.
This is Missy. I love how you answered that, Erin. I just want to add a little bit to it because I think it was so perfect, and want to give a different perspective as someone who culturally grew up with interdependence. My family being Filipino on my mother's side, we grew up where our cousins were our siblings, our family were tied together. And I look at the question that was asked, and it is all about how do we come together and support each other. I always think about the saying that my mom raised me with, which is, it takes a village. And I hope that we can keep thinking about that beyond just a cultural identity, but all of the different ways we can show up for each other, because we are stronger together. And that's really what interdependence to me is about, is that we are all intertwined with each other's lives. And the more that we can recognize that, and recognize that we can lift each other up, the more we can see how that strength will get us to a better place. So that I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
This is Sabine. Thanks, Missy, for sharing that, and Erin for your really lovely answer. Both of y'all, I think, have hit on something really key. And I just have one other brief thing to add, which is I think from an American cultural perspective, we formulate independence as of value, and inside of that framework, we see asking for help as inherently weak, and interdependence is an opportunity to interrupt that. As someone who has been blind all my life, there have always been things that I'm just not ever going to do by myself. And I remember speaking on at an event not unrelated to this type of work, and saying, oh, I don't mess with independence. I think the language that I had used previously was collaboration. And I think concept of interdependence are about acknowledging that asking for help is a part of being alive and being in a community. And also that if you are also sort of denying this power imbalance of asking for help, right? And understanding that if you are someone who has to ask for help reading a street sign, that does not negate the value of what you can do for someone else who needs something from you. I think that's a really critical way to think about, especially yourself as a disabled person, is that like your need to ask for help does not in any way interrupt your ability to provide care or to achieve in areas that you are passionate about. I think we get really stuck on independence and concepts of independence being opposed by dependence rather than independence being in conversation with interdependence and collaboration. And I see that there's another poll on the screen, so engage with that.
This is Nicole. I think that's the results of the poll.
Oh, excellent.
I did see another question though, and I recognize we only have about 4 minutes, but Linda asked, do you see ways that the ADA can intersect with other civil rights laws in order to advance intersectional disability justice in a legal sense in tandem with the social movement? Does anyone have thoughts on that one?
This is Missy. I do. I think that there are ways that we can move beyond just the ADA. I think that with not just the civil rights laws, but our immigration laws. How does the ADA and disability rights miss out on a huge group of people who are concerned about even looking for help, looking for justice and accessibility because of their fear of their immigration status? Those are things that I think of that are really great opportunities where not only the ADA can come together with other laws, but ways in which other communities can come together to recognize how our systems are oppressing large groups of people and make it more accessible and remove some of the fears that people have in being able to say that their needs are not being met. Thank you.
Thank you, Missy. So I think also we talk about the ADA being, this is the 31st anniversary, right? And I was really tickled that the tagline for this anniversary put forth by the Great Lakes ADA Center was 31 years is enough notice, right? I think that rules. And I think that speaks to the experience of people working around the ADA with feeling, and outside of it, feeling like it is in many ways the bare minimum. And I think in other areas of civil rights legislature, there are similar feelings, knowing that a 31-year anniversary is both momentous and a bit distressing when you consider what other work there is to do and how long 31 years is. I think it is important for people to learn about the history of the ADA and its context as being very much about productivity and access to capital and access to spaces to gain capital, to participate in capitalism as a marker of public participation and success. And I think a real thing that we could be thinking about on the 31st anniversary is how we would like to see civil rights laws in general and the ADA specifically grow to accommodate an intersectional conversation about what participation in public life is and what meaningful access looks like.
This is Mel, and I just wanted to bring our Lunch and Learn webinar to a close on that very poignant note about the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA. I'd like to thank you all for attending today's session in celebration of the 31st anniversary of the ADA. And a thank you to our presenters, Sabine Rear, Missy Elliott, Erin Taylor, and Nicole Bergstall. And please join us next week for the 4th and final Lunch and Learn webinar of our celebration. The title of that webinar is Inclusive Emergency Planning and COVID-19 Equity, and starts at noon Pacific on Tuesday, July 27th. The entire series of Lunch and Learn webinars will be posted on the Oregon Disabilities Commission website. Use the link ADA Celebration. So with that, and on behalf of the Oregon Disabilities Commission and Northwest ADA Center, thank you, take care, and we hope to see you next week.